what's a problem in my life? And if there's a problem in my life that I feel that I can't really answer, well, there must be so many other women who feel the same, especially if I'm somebody who's in a position to help, like I'm supposed to have all the answers. And if I don't have an answer for something that's happening in my financial life, that's probably a good place to start.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bosch, real estate investor, mom, wife, and host of the InFLOW podcast. And I'm passionate about helping women invest in land and apartments. Join me each and every week for real estate investing strategies and interviews with thought leaders that will leave you inspired and ready to step into flow for inflows of cash, inflows of ease, and inflows of grace in your life. Now, here on YouTube are the video versions of my podcast, and in order for you to get my latest information, please go ahead and subscribe. And now, let's go. Welcome to the InFLOW podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bosch. I am super excited about my guest today. Today, I have Farnoosh Torabi with me. She is the leading financial expert in the US today. Her mission is to help you live your richest and most fulfilled life. She is a speaker, a best-selling author. I think your first book was You're So Money back in 2008. Then you did another one on Psych Yourself Rich, I believe. And then the most recent one, which I think was When She Makes More. I am very interested about that one as well. Excited to hear more about that book. She is also the host of the So Money podcast. Is one of the top podcasts when it comes to money and finances and personal finance. And she is a person that makes, weekly appearances on NBC, CNBC. She writes for Glamour, for Mary Claire, for the Oprah magazine. It's such an honor to have you here with me today, Farnoosh. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And if any of you want to hear more about Michelle, come on the podcast, So Money. I just interviewed you. You're such a superstar. I'm impressed with so much that you have built. And you're a complete role model for me, too. So it's mutual admiration society here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Farnoosh, so I was just discussing right now with you briefly at the beginning of, the recording. I want to hear about your background. How did you grow up around money? I know, your parents are Persian, from Iran, and, what kind of beliefs around money did you grow up with? And tell us all about it.
Sure. Well, I often say it's a big reason why I became a financial author and dedicated so much of my career to helping people with their money. It was because of the way I was raised. Mm-hmm. So I have an education in finance and I have a lot of career experience with money, but it's really my mom and my dad that gave me the sort of mindset to be able to talk about money, be interested and curious about money. I'm Middle Eastern. I was born in the United States. My parents moved here around 1980. I was born here and they immigrated from Iran. And I think as I've spoken to other Iranians and other people from the Middle East, there's definitely an openness to talking about money. And some would even say that it's egregious. Like there's just too much nosiness when it comes to money. Like we want to know what things cost. We want to know how much people make. We want to bargain. We want to negotiate. We look at the financial world through the lens of investing and, growing wealth and all of that. And there's also a different narrative too, depending on, I guess, maybe the cultural there's a lot of different cultures, even within the bigger culture of Iranians. There's like, as with any, culture, there's subcultures. And there's definitely a subculture. I think that's very much the case in the United States too, where there's a lot of materialism, like the flashy, like wanting the big fancy house, the big fancy car, the designer handbag, and that's definitely an aspect to being Persian. It's not everybody, but I mean, if you like I just have to turn to Bravo and look at like the what is that show, Shaws of Sunset? I mean, that's definitely an aspect of the culture, but it's not the culture. Just like there's always going to be that person in your family that's like obsessed with her Chanel. So that is definitely something that was also in the background growing up, where it was sort of these two competing philosophies, which is like work hard, save, invest, but also like treat yourself and go for the bigger house if you can. There's a lot of financial ambition that I grew up with. My parents came here with very little.
Yeah.
My father was a student. He was getting his PhD. My mom had me very young at 19 and went to school later, finished college in America as she was raising me and working part-time. So my parents are not shy when it comes to working hard. They always had the goal to go big. You know, they wanted the American dream to the fullest extent. And I kind of grew up with them as they climbed. And I think that experience also was very transformative for me. And to be able to watch them and see the results of their hard work was a learning lesson in and of itself. I often say, you know, it's not what you tell your kids, it's what you show your kids.
What you demonstrate,
when it comes to money, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I know that you started in journalism, and then, and you said you have, you know, an education and a background in finance, and did you just wake up one day, okay, you know, I see exactly where those two meet. There's an intersection and there's an opportunity. How did you find your way and what has become now your greatest work?
It was a lot of strategy. And I mean, I'm a deep thinker. I think a lot of your listeners and viewers can relate. If you're someone who's ambitious, you're always thinking 5 steps ahead. Yeah. And I am a planner. I come from, you know, academic background, both my parents, and I definitely have that part of my brain that's always, you know, wanting to, you know, not be surprised by life. Like I want to know what's around the corner. And I will say that
totally get it.
Yeah. But like leave some room for spontaneity. But
when it comes to money, at least for me, I'm like, I don't want any surprises. I want it to be predictable. I want it to be boring.
Yeah. So there were, you know, I think that the journey to identifying my career path, you know, it's not like you can go to college and major in financial journalism, or there weren't even a lot of role models at the time to know that that could even be something that I could do. But I think my first love was always journalism and writing and communicating. And I had a background in theater. So if I were to be a journalist, I thought broadcast would be better for me because I'm not shy to the mic. I don't mind the performance aspect. And, you know, there's a little bit of performance when you're telling a story on live television. You know, you have to you can't be frightful. You have to have that, that I was very secure. And I was like, I know that's what I love to do. But I kept hearing, you know, the rational side of me was worried about being able to survive on a, you know, journalist salary. I didn't want to ever be in a place where I felt financially dependent on anybody. And so I got a lot of cautionary advice, even from journalists who were older, who would like come to my school and talk to us or through friends saying like, it's not just enough to have passion for this. You have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. You know, you're not, especially if you think about, you know, journalists, we work 24/7. So holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, in the beginning, at least, you might be working these holidays. You might have to go to remote parts of the country to work at first to build up your kind of your life and your career. You're not going to make a lot of money. And I was like, I like this, but I don't like it that much. But then, when I got to college, my father was like, just major in something that's going to give you an ROI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I know. It's
like journalism, like you can work at your school paper and pretty much learn what you need to learn. But like while you're in college, investing and paying for the tuition, like learn something that you could not learn outside of a classroom necessarily at this stage in your life. So I took finance as my degree, and I pursued that because I was like, well, what is the most likely path to making money when you graduate? Learn about money in school. So I did that, but I kept this voice inside of me. Michelle just kept saying, you know, there has to be more. I don't think this is my end all. You know, like I think there's more for me. I'm good at money. I can crunch numbers. But this is not what I was put on the planet to do. And it was at an internship that summer in college. One summer, I think I was 19 or 20 years old, working in New York, working for CNBC on the business side of the network, not on the news side. that I got sort of the bug again. I was like, okay, I really appreciate the business aspect of this network, but I really want to go on the other side of it. So while I was there, I started to, get friendly with some of the reporters. I started to learn more about how to become a journalist again. It's like, well, maybe I can transition. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to try to find a way to make money. Yeah. I actually learned that business journalists make about more than average. So that was definitely music to my ears.
Yeah.
And then I started to look into programs that could allow me to easily transition from business to journalism. And I started to look at all the people who were working in the field. What were their bios? How did they get there? Oh, okay. Well, maybe you should go get your MBA, or maybe you should, well, great that I'm studying finance, but maybe I should also get a journalism degree on top of that. So that's how I started to kind of see the path, was a little bit of listening to my soul, but also like doing what I thought was rational, but then those competing forces, okay, how can I make a compromise? Yeah. And from studying finance, I finished my degree at Penn State. Then I went immediately into journalism school at Columbia, and then immediately started working in financial news in New York City, not the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I know.
Not a lot of money, but there was sort of a lot of promise, and eventually working for myself in this field. I feel like I've, hit the jackpot in so many ways.
Yeah. I love this that you said, I listen to my soul, that deep yearning that many of us have. But I also need to, package that and look at it, from a very realistic perspective and see who are people that are doing, similar to the things that I want to do, and kind of like reverse engineer your way, to who you want to become. I love and admire, the left brain, the right brain coming together to really help you find your way. Absolutely. I know that you've started Farnoosh and you kind of like started, listening to, the voice of your soul, like you said, and went out there, got your second degree, started working, on personal finance, started creating your audience at a very young age. Because to be frank, at I think age 22, yeah. I was already, done with schooling at that point. I think I was probably finishing up my MBA as well, but I didn't have that clear picture. I knew, a couple years later that, what I was doing, I hated. So I'm a little bit, a few years behind you. And you start growing your audience. You start, also, time passes by, you start growing up, your audience is growing up as well, and then you become a mother, you become the breadwinner in your family, you publish that when she makes more book. And what kind of challenges, have you encountered or had to overcome by being the breadwinner of the family? And what I mean by challenges, I want to know, like, socially, like how you're perceived, emotionally, what are you going through, and more tangibly, financially, like what challenges did you have to overcome, as you made that transition from being a young adult to a mom to the breadwinner and so on?
Yeah, I'm going to be really candid. I think that what was hardest for us in the marriage, and everyone has their own pain points mm-hmm. when they are in a marriage, and there's financial complexity. And, in our marriage, the complexity was that we weren't living the kind of traditional economic life of he making more and she making the same or less. Mm-hmm. And I first identified this as a potential complexity when I was thinking about writing my next book. I was about to get married, and I was like in a bar waiting for my husband to show up, and I had a notebook. I always have a notebook and a pen with me, and I was like, okay, I was thinking a lot in those days about what I wanted to write. I was thinking I definitely wanted to write for women, something very special and timely that had to do with money. And at the time, this was like 2010, the book came out in 2014. So a couple of years before that, this is kind of what, as you know, it takes years for your book to come out. But this is like my thought process was, I want to write something for women that is, I'm going to take the conversation to the next level, that also sort of addresses the real most modern current trends that are happening with women and money.
Yeah.
And the next thought I had was, well, what am I experiencing that could potentially be the seed of an idea? And I thought, what's a problem in my life? And if there's a problem in my life that I feel that I can't really answer, well, there must be so many other women who feel the same, especially if I'm somebody who's in a position to help, like I'm supposed to have all the answers. And if I don't have an answer for something that's happening in my financial life, that's probably a good place to start exploring. Yeah. So I thought, there is this taboo issue in my relationship, which is that I make more. It's not taboo to my husband and I, but I felt like there was this inability for us to be open about it.
Yeah.
Like when we would go out, something as simple as going out to dinner with friends, what usually happens? The husband settled the bill, which I thought was so interesting because it was often a reflection of who was kind of in financial dominance in the relationship, right? Who was it's just traditionally been a male thing to like each of them put down the credit cards or pay for the dinner. And I was like, and then they're going to think that he makes more than I do, which I don't care, but that was weird to me. Like if I were to then put down my credit card the next double date, like what would happen then? Like, come on. People are going to start like,
and I know exactly what you're talking about. Because, as Jack and I work together, and we're also married to each other. And when we go out there with friends, he pays. I'm like, but if they knew that all the big financial decisions, when it comes to the business are basically being done ultimately by me, and but you have to. But you feel a little bit like socially awkward if you're
you feel like
doing
you have to conform to social norm.
Yeah.
And in that same vein, you don't tell people that you make more than your husband, because then what does that say about him? I would go on job interviews and people would, and like, this is not actually lawful, but like I would have employers say, what does your husband do? Because maybe they knew I was the breadwinner, or, I had a very public facing role, as I was on television. Like the assumption is that maybe you do make more than your partner. And there was a lot of like unhealthy curiosity about what my husband did. And like, how does that work? I got that question a lot. How does it work that you make more than your husband? As if like, we're walking around with naked, without like, or we're driving backwards. Like, I don't know. I mean, how does it work? It's just money, but it's not just money. It's layers of social conditioning that make you feel less than or inadequate or not normal because you have a different financial dynamic in your relationship. So it wasn't even so much our own issues individually with it. It was how it was being perceived and that pressure on us. And, I didn't like the feeling as though people were judging my husband unfairly because he didn't make more than I did. Like, well, how is he really a good provider then? Is he really a good husband then? Is he really is he ambitious even? They would ask, it's like, that's so unfair, but that's kind of how we've been conditioned to think. And so I started to explore this further. There's so much research on this, Michelle. We found that when she makes more, there's a higher chance for divorce. Men feel emasculated. I did my own study, 1,000 women, split between women who make more than their partners and women who make the same or less, and kind of broke it down as far as how do you feel about what's your satisfaction in your marriage? How much housework do you do? This, and it's all very tough. The results of all that is like tough to bear. You can find out that women sometimes don't want to be the breadwinners in their marriages because they are just so overwhelmed with the judging and also the work that, it's women do more housework when they make more because they want to make up for what they feel as should be like their feminine role, their feminine duties, and domestic responsibilities are often a female thing. So they end up overdoing it in the household. They actually do more housework than women who make the same or less. That's sick.
Yeah.
You know, like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
And for me, like, I remember there's years where I could totally justify a new hire in the business, but I could not justify the support here at home. And I'm like, hello, I need to, see that equally. It's one whole life. It's not just my life at work and my life at home. It's
all a blend. And I was talking to a female breadwinner just a few weeks ago at a work event, and she came up to me, as always happens. A woman will find me and come up, hey, I'd like to ask you a question about, I read your book, or I'm reading your book. It's always like, they're not going to raise their hand in the group and be like, I'm the female breadwinner and I have a question. They usually find me offline, or they get me into a corner. And she said, I love my husband. I'm not resentful. I love my job. I love it. But what I find to be really annoying sometimes is that when I go to work and I work with all these men whose wives are not the breadwinners.
Yeah.
And they come to work and they can stay late. And they came to work with no stress, perhaps, because everything was laundered, everything was ironed, their breakfast was on the table before they left. Their wives take care of everything. Yeah. So they have no responsibilities really outside of work. And then here I am, expected to compete with these men, right, at work. I am the breadwinner in my marriage, just like they are, but I go home and I have 1,000 things to do. I woke up, she said to me, I woke up this morning and I had no underwear, so does that happen? Maybe when you're the male breadwinner, but I would argue it happens more often when you're the female breadwinner.
Absolutely. I would have to say it as well. Now, I know, Farnoosh, that you got a little bit of criticism, if not just a little bit, probably a lot. I know that you shared an opinion about women that decide to stay at home, which I've always respected that decision. But at the same time, I'm totally with you in that the moment that you make that decision, that there is something that could inherently go wrong when it comes to dependency, financially, that can translate into dependency emotionally, psychologically, and so on and so forth. So what was that opinion? Tell us exactly the blanket statement that you made out there and how you've navigated, what's your perspective? Why do you think that?
Well, and to be fair, I think this extends to men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
The title of the piece, which I didn't choose, but I don't necessarily disagree with, is I don't believe in stay-at-home parenting. And here's why. That was a very controversial piece. Like you, I respect everyone for any decision they make. I think that every decision is hard, and especially decisions that have to do with your family, your career, your life. I mean, life is hard, and there is no easy answer sometimes. But, I think that I just want so much for people when it comes to their financial safety and their financial independence that I think that it is unfair for me to kind of sit back and be like, sure, be a stay-at-home parent. Good luck with that. There are so many things you need to be at least just aware of. And if you're aware of these things and you're still okay with being a stay-at-home parent indefinitely, then okay. My job is just to bring you the information, and hopefully, I have opinions. It's not for me. And I think that if a girlfriend were to come to me with this crossroads and say, my husband makes twice as much as I do. Our childcare is basically what I earn. So I'm thinking of stepping out of the workforce to be the primary caretaker. It just doesn't make financial sense. And she's right. It doesn't make financial sense in that moment.
Yeah.
But the risk that we run often is that we don't think long-term. We don't think about the large implications of us not working necessarily have on our financial security and our family's financial security. It is a fact. This isn't, I didn't make this up. It's a fact that when you have a single income household, they are far more likely to experience financial setbacks. Because if that single earner, whether it was the man or the husband or the wife loses their job.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have any income to fall back on. That's one. Number two, when you're not working, and let's say you had a salaried job, when you're not working, you're not just giving up your salary or giving up your Social Security, that getting put into your Social Security for your future. You're not being able to invest in your 401k. And so the grand total of what you're losing financially is far more than what you think is just babysitting money.
Yeah.
And then not to mention, in the event that there is a breakup, you know, you want to be able to afford that without feeling beholden to your partner and not feeling, which is such a big problem in this country, the financial abuse sometimes of being in a relationship where you're not making any money and your partner is sort of dangling that over you and saying like, it's my way or the highway, and you don't have a financial fallback. You know, I've learned a lot from the Me Too movement, and the biggest takeaway that I don't think we're talking about enough is that women need financial agency. That a lot of the women who fell prey to these predators, these male predators in Hollywood, on Wall Street, every industry, often at the end of the day, you heard this a lot. You heard, well, I felt like I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to lose my job, right? So I took the harassment. I took the bullshit. I took all of it. And I completely empathize with that. But imagine if she had a nest egg. Imagine if she had savings. Imagine if she was making more than what she was. And money gives you agency, whether you're in a job that you hate, in a marriage that you hate, you know what I mean? And so that's where I'm coming from. It's not coming from a place of, well, I don't believe in the value of a stay-at-home parent. I think that's a beautiful dynamic. I mean, imagine if you could be with your child every day. Like, that's important to a lot of people. And I want people to be able to pursue that, but be smart about it. So if that is your plan to stay home, before you do that, can you save some money for yourself? And if you are going to stay out of the workforce, do you have an exit strategy to come back into the workforce, a re-entry strategy back into the workforce? Is there something you can do in the meantime to make a little bit of money, or stay at least eligible in your field to get the job in 2 years, whereas you're continuing to network, or you're taking a workshop here or there online. You don't even have to leave the house. So that's all I'm saying. And I think people misinterpreted that as Farnoosh doesn't value stay-at-home parenting, that it's better to work.
Yeah. No. And like I've met, several women that and one comes to mind where, they have children that are already older. I can understand, like you said, in the very, very beginning when the children are really small, very young, but her kids are now, teenagers, and she's married to one of the high profile CEOs owning a financial services company in the country. And yet, there is issues in their marriage and abusive and so on and so forth. And there's this incredible dependency where she, was incredibly fearful of, like, oh my gosh, if this marriage doesn't work, I have nothing to fall back on. I have no career. I don't even know what to start. I don't know what I'm good at. There was like almost like a loss of self identity of who she is at her core. And based on, whatever prenup they had, if that comes to shove, I have probably like 48 hours to vacate the home. So for me, from a real estate perspective, I'm like, ooh, not knowing even that your home, that this piece of real estate, that this is something that is yours, and all the probably abuse that she'll have to continue taking as a result of not even having that as a safety, as a certainty, the roof over your head. And so it was like, wow. So it is something to think about. If you haven't, that this could happen, that perhaps right now in this moment, the relationship is great, but who knows, what could happen in the future. and so on and so forth. And not that we are being fatalistic about our future, but that, things can happen.
Right.
Period. Yeah.
I had a very angry podcast listener, because I talk about this quite a lot. At this point, comes up a lot. But this one listener was very unhappy with me, and she wrote a review saying, like, how dare she judge us? And I have a plan. As it turns out, my plan is that if my husband dies, I will get his life insurance. And if he divorces me, well, I get half. And I was like, that's your plan? That's not good enough for me. If that's good enough for you, then fine. But I feel I want more for you than that. I don't want you to have just the money in case of a disaster. And by the way, if anyone's been through a divorce, you don't get that 50%. You might not get that, and you might not get that right away. Yeah. And if your plan is for him to die so that you can have your money back, I mean, that's just
there's something
I just didn't understand.
There's something wrong with that picture.
You need a plan B. When we are forced to reconsider our life's choices, that's a hard reconciliation, and we don't want people who don't know us to give those opinions. I get it, but it hasn't stopped me. I'm going to just keep giving people
I applaud you for that opinion. Absolutely. Now, shifting a little bit of gears here, Farnoosh. So we talked about, you being the breadwinner of your family, juggling, a home life, a book, perhaps the podcast. What do you do on a daily basis to get in the zone or to be in flow, basically? How do you bring some ease into your life?
Well, I tell you, I don't schedule much before 11 a.m. that is work related. I have the privilege to work from home. I don't have a boss that's like, and so I can do that. And that leaves me the morning, which I have early mornings. I have children who wake me up this morning at 6:20 a.m., sometimes earlier. And so I'm like up. So by 11, I've had 5 hours to kind of get in my flow. And I need that time because the way I wake up is not like a lot of people. Like I wake up with bang, out the bed, like making the breakfast, making the lunches, dressing my kids, sometimes bathing them in the mornings, getting them to the bus stop. And so by 8 o'clock, I need a break. I need a coffee. I need just to kind of like ease into the professional work day. And fortunately, most people haven't gotten to work yet. So I use that 8 to 9 to 10 o'clock. In New York, some people don't get to work until 10. So I use that time to kind of go through my inbox, see what needs like some responses or just planning the rest of my day. And I do plan like hour to sometimes half an hour increments. So some days are much more demanding than others. Like some days I have to record several podcasts, or I have a meeting that's in another location. I have to like budget transportation time getting back, being home in time to release my nanny. So I'm a slow inflower in the mornings, and then because I know that usually by noon it's rush till dinner time. So I might only work like a 5 hour day, but it feels like a 10-hour day because I am multitasking during those 5 hours, and usually like really changing it up, like going out to meet somebody, coming back home, picking up my kid from his bus stop maybe.
Makes total sense. I mean, for me, the same, Barb usually books any podcast recordings, for example. I'm like, no earlier than 10, please. And the only early morning I have is on Tuesdays at 8:30. We usually have a team meeting, and, in consideration to everyone else in our team who's East Coast, we actually make it at 8:30, which is 10:30 for them. Sometimes.
And then I work at night. That's all the other thing. I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person.
Yeah, so the same here. That's not me.
Yeah.
I wake up straight to get Sophia to, to get her ready, hair, lunchbox, get her to school. And my time to really, think about getting in flow and in the zone doesn't start until 8:15 when I'm back from dropping her off.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. Now, how has faith had and spirituality have had an effect in creating and helping you create inflows of cash, inflows of ease, and inflows of grace in your life? Has that had any role? And if so, what?
Yeah, I feel very much like a faithful person. My parents raised us to believe in God and to believe in sort of the luck of the world, but also like that you create your own luck. But sometimes you just have to let the universe guide you, and hopefully you're prepared and you feel like your life's experiences prepare you for what's next, even though you don't know what's next. Yeah. So a lot of that comes with just maturing in age and feeling that confidence comes with age. I'll share a story with you of in my early 20s, I was dating and not really getting anywhere. No traction, as most people probably can relate to. And I just felt like my career was going great. Not early. This is probably 25. So quarter life crisis, as some people might call it. I was having a quarter life crisis in only one department, which was my personal life, which was I felt very alone. I had great friends. I had lovely colleagues. I loved my job, but I felt like I was missing that sort of intimate connection with someone. And I definitely did believe in true love, and I was very ready for it. And I just kept hitting a lot of roadblocks along the way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was like me feeling more open to it too. I think in the early days, I was sort of very resistant I was very judgmental, maybe even just a little too high standardy. But I also felt like these are my standards and this is who I am. So I'm not going to change who I am. It's that whole like vicious cycle we all go through as we date. And I remember, there was a lot of momentum building before I met my husband, where I felt like I was getting closer and closer and closer to finding the right person. And it was a combination of like listening to the people who loved me a lot tell me that, taking the advice of others and feeling as though, and learning more and more about myself throughout this 1 year before I met my husband, like who I really wanted to be with, and having more clarity around it, being more open to it. And do you know what? The year that I should say reconnected with my husband, because I actually went to college with him. Mm-hmm. And in college, when I first met him, I was like, this guy, what is happening to me? I must know him. I must get to know him. He's interesting. I feel a connection to this guy. And we were in a similar classroom, but we just didn't have an opportunity to really connect. But I did remember over the course of the year getting to know him, I said, I'm going to marry this guy. I remember saying that. I mean, I wasn't the kind of person who said this a lot. I never said it again in my life. I just said, I'm going to marry him. Uh-huh. And I was 19 years old. And so then fast forward to when I was 25, he reappeared in my life just through the internet. Like we were on, I think social media was picking up, and we were reacquainted on social media. And I feel like if we had gotten together when I was 19, it would not have worked out. But by that point in my life and in his life, we knew who we were. We were both interested in finding love again, or for the first time, and just it worked. And then we got dated and we got married. But all I would say to the run up of that, especially the year before that, things got really intense for me in terms of like feeling like I was going to find that person. Yeah. And I would think I was just tapping into whatever it was. Like there was like a stupid story. And one day my mother, she's very spiritual. She was like, Farnoosh, today you must pray. You must pray for the man that you are going to meet. And it was like a random day when I was 25, and I was like, Mom, enough with the praying. Like she prays a lot. And so I was coming home from work one day, and I just sat on a park bench, and I was like, you know what, God, or whoever you are, like I would be so open to receiving, a committed relationship this year. or soon. And no sooner than a few months later did I reconnect with my husband. So I don't know what that is. Don't like follow that.
That is ask and you shall receive.
That's asking, you shall receive. That's also telling the universe what you want.
Yeah.
I told the universe at 19 that I was going to marry this guy. Forgot about it.
Yeah.
Went on with my life. And now in hindsight, I was like, okay, that may have been just a coincidence, but I also feel like I'm so glad that the universe didn't give me that, if that's until several years later, 6, 7, 8 years later, reintroducing me to this person. Of course, all that I felt about him at 19 was still there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. That it's that there is a little bit of faith meeting you and you know co-creating
yourself, because I'm not a very I don't think I never felt like that. I didn't know what that feeling was, but I was like open to like recognizing it and being like, and just kind of letting it go run its course through me. And I just, and I did go and I told my roommates that night, I said, I'm going to marry this guy. And they said, okay, whatever. And when I reconnected with, his name is Tim, years later, first person I called after that was my roommate. And I said, you'll never believe who I'm talking to. And she knew. She said, is it Tim?
Oh
my God.
Yes.
I don't know. And you know, when he re-entered my life online, like his name popped up on my screen. This was years later, right? I'm at work. I'm on the phone and I felt like the room was spinning. I don't know what that was either. Like these are all these signs. And again, I'm not like a super woo-woo person. I don't tap into signs normally, but I was like, if 10 years from now we're married with kids, like this is all going to be in a book. This is all going to make sense to me. But like right now, I don't know. And I don't want to really believe it too hard because I don't want to get my hopes up. But
and sometimes things seem random, but you know, decisions that we make, you know, in hindsight, you start realizing they're not so random, you know, that, you know, sitting at in a bench and praying and asking and also co-creating in terms of like putting it out there. You know, with incredible certainty and radical conviction, I will marry this man.
Well, you know what my friend once told me,
it is not.
When I was having my episodes with one bad date after another in my 20s, a girlfriend of mine said, you know what, maybe you've just already given your heart away to someone. And that someone is going to re-enter your life when you're ready, but your heart is not open because you've already given it away. And I said, who would I have given it away to? Perhaps the man that I told the universe that I was going to marry when I was 18. So be very careful. We are always worried about, you know, the big brother watching us, but it's actually the universe. It's much bigger than Big Brother. So be careful what you tell it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that Tim is there, you guys found each other, have 2 children, and I know you mentioned that you are now together thinking about your next real estate purchase. Tell us about that. I know that you're super excited. You just had some great news today. So
well, I'm sitting in an apartment in Brooklyn where we've lived for 9 years. It actually started as one apartment. We broke through to the second neighboring apartment when we were growing our family. We love this home, and if I was to tell you that I haven't shed a few tears over leaving, I would be lying. It's really emotional, but we are ready for the next real estate chapter. We love New York City, but as we are getting older and our children are getting older, we are finding that our values are changing as far as what we really need and want in a home and in a location. So we're in the process of leaving. We've sold this beautiful apartment. We are closing in the next couple of weeks. And things are moving quickly. You know, they move slow in the beginning and then all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, you're closing. And then we're going to move to out of state, but close by still. And we're looking at houses this weekend. We think there's one that we might just put an offer on. We don't know, but we love this one house that we are looking at right now. And the goal is to be moved over to the new house by the end of the summer. We want the kids to finish the school year here, but it's a lot of moving parts, as you know, especially if you're dealing with schools as well, and, you know, a close, and then you want to buy, and timing it all.
Yeah.
We're going to rent, actually. So where are we going to live, you know, between now and moving into the house that we haven't bought yet is we're going to.
That you haven't found perhaps yet. Yeah.
Right. It could take months.
So tell us from a, as a financial expert, what advice would you give someone that is in your situation right now? They have an offer on their home, they're selling their home, and now you're looking to buy, but you haven't found yet. Like, what would be, what have been your considerations basically in navigating this new big purchase and this big financial decision? Well,
unless you're okay with living in limbo, I'm not. I like to know that when I close, I have cash in the bank, right, from the close, that I can now use to make like a less stressful decision as far as where I'm going to move. Now, the problem is you have to leave the house after you close, so you're out homeless until you find your next place.
Yeah.
And I'm totally supportive of renting in the meantime.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We're renting in the neighborhood. We were very lucky in that we did find a short-term lease, so we don't have to commit to an entire year, and we would have just not used the apartment for probably the last 3 or 4 months of the lease. But renting can give you a really nice cushion to make decisions with more ease. And now it's not fun to move twice, you know, moving and then moving again. But we think it's affording us the opportunity to, one, for us, because we're a family, we want the kids to finish the school year. Two, potentially even bring down our housing costs for a little bit, because when we rent, we're not paying HOA, we're not paying taxes, all of that. And so we are actually going to save a little bit of money monthly as renters. So that's good. More money for when we buy the next house. And it also allows us to buy the next house with more confidence, knowing that we have the money. We don't have to buy with a closing contingency on our home. And
no pressures. And you can buy the home that you want, that you need, that really, serves all its purposes. And
a real estate agent friend once told me, never buy before you sell.
Oh, yeah.
Because what happened in, for example, the financial crisis, the housing crisis, was people would buy their next house and then go back and deal with the business of their current home and try to sell it. Well, then the housing crisis happened, and then you can't sell, and now you've got 2 mortgages that you weren't planning. Maybe you can float 2 houses for a while, but not for the unforeseeable future. So that's a risk.
Yeah. So staying disciplined is what you're saying, and still, sell it first, then start looking for something else. Yeah.
We started this process back in August, September.
Yeah.
We put our home on the market in late September.
Plus, the market cycle, we don't know where,
We don't know. And we're so thankful that we started sooner than later, because especially in New York City, the difference, especially right now, the difference between putting your home on the market last September versus now is, it was difficult in September. It's even more difficult now. It's just not a good selling market. It's definitely a buyer's market.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people stay connected to you, Farnoosh? I mean, you are the host of the So Money, so you can follow Farnoosh there, but how else can people reach you, connect with you?
Thanks. So the So Money podcast is definitely something I'd love for all of your fans to check out. You can go to somoneypodcast.com. I'm a big user on Instagram. I'd love to build to the community there. I'm constantly on DM, and I encourage people to send me their money questions on DM, direct message on Instagram, because on Fridays, I dedicate the podcast to answering listener questions, and that's often where I get them. And it's not uncommon for me to respond to you pretty quickly from there. So at Farnoosh Torabi on Instagram. And that's pretty much it. And then When She Makes More, if you're a breadwinner or thinking about it, it's always good to get prepared.
I know. Yes.
Your book. But thank you so much for having me. This has been
Thank you, Farnoosh. It was an honor to have you. I was so, curious and learning about your background, how you grew up, and, the backstory to the book, and just in general, how you have found your great work, found, that deep yearning, listening to the soul with like, okay, but realistically, how am I gonna make this happen? Bringing those worlds, both of those worlds together, to go out there and now be, an inspiration to a lot of, women, to a lot of men as well, to an entire generation that has grown with you. And so thank you so much. It was such an honor having you.
Thank you.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and ready to get inflows of cash, inflows of light, and inflows of faith in your life. I welcome your reviews on iTunes. Please leave me a review and help me create an amazing community of women in flow. Thank you, as always, for sharing your voice by going to michellebosch.com and joining the conversation about this show. And while you're there, grab a copy of my 10 Commandments to Living a Life in Flow. You can also follow me on Facebook at Michelle Bosch and on Instagram at Michelle Bosch Official. Thank you very much, and until the next one.